Discover 7 sinister stories unveiled by rain, terrifying truths that haunt you while you sleep. The rain was not just coming down, it was a torrential downpour, a relentless symphony beating against Laura's window, each drop a reminder of the shadows that loomed just outside. She should have felt safe in Willow Creek, where drizzles usually blanketed her evenings in tranquility. But tonight was different. Danny's cries echoed from the hallway, echoing the terror he couldn't shake, like an unshakable specter clinging to his heart. "Mommy!" "The shadow!" The word sent chills racing up her spine. As a weary single mother, she had tried everything to soothe him: nightlights, bedtime stories, even warm baths. Yet nothing quelled the fear of that elusive figure lurking just beyond their home, waiting, watching. Days of rain turned the suburban streets into a hustle of reflections and shadows. What was once a comforting sound now clawed at Laura's mind, gnawing away at her sanity. Between her demanding job at the grocery store and being the sole parent to Danny, she felt cornered, trapped in a nightmare where the rain whispered dark secrets. She reasoned his fears were just part of childhood, a vivid imagination. But how do you dismiss what's been so terrifying for him? She felt a tightening there, in her chest, a sense of urgency wrapped in dread. It escalated when the messages began. A vibration on her phone drew her attention: unfamiliar numbers with chilling messages. "I see it too. The shadow. It wants him." Laura's heart raced as she read the words again, a terror she had only seen reflected in Danny's eyes now etched in letters right before her. Who was doing this? What hidden truth did it reveal about her neighborhood? Nerves frayed, she glimpsed through the rain-streaked windows at the Johnsons across the street, whose huddled figures exchanged whispered glances, eyes darting in sync with the downpour. The storm? Or had it brought something darker? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A late-night knock shattered her cautious thoughts. The rain drummed an ominous beat, pulling her to the door like an unseen force. Heart racing, she peeked through the peephole. No one. But with each echoing drop, it felt like something watched her. The police were overwhelmed, their resources dwindling. Stories of disappearances spiraled through the community like the rain turning to a torrent. An uneasy feeling hung thick in the air, an accusation left unspoken among the neighbors' faces. Desperate to protect Danny, Laura decided to confront the scrutiny in the storm. Each step felt heavier as she ventured outside, the rain washing over her like a shadow. The darkness ahead felt alive, pulsing. Then, there it was, a stone, weathered and marked, half sunken in the mud by her cul-de-sac, a name etched in moss-darkened letters. A feeling of glassy horror washed over her, it was familiar. Fumbling, she whispered its name. As lightning briefly illuminated the marker, it felt almost conspiratorial, like the rain itself cackled with sinister secrets. The fear thickened, her resolve tightening as the shadows whispered promises of revelations. She couldn't turn back. She stood on the edge of the abysses surrounding her world, both supernatural and human. What had once felt like home was now a haunted vessel, filled to overflowing with despair and unearthly dread. The storm wasn't going to stop, and neither would the truth that was waiting to drown her if she let it in. As thunder rumbled overhead, her breath caught in her throat. The stone loomed before her, a silent witness to despair, and she stumbled back, heart hammering like a prisoner trying to escape. No. No. This wasn't happening. She needed to focus, to protect Danny. But the rain cascaded down, mixing with her rising panic, blurring the line between reality and shadow. "Mommy!" Danny's voice cried out from the darkened doorway, piercing her thoughts. He stood silhouetted against the flickering light of their home, his small body trembling. The sight tugged fiercely at Laura's heart. The fear in his eyes mirrored her own, amplifying her resolve. She stepped away from the stone, vowing to turn over every rock in this cursed town if it meant keeping her son safe. Rushing back inside, she pulled Danny into her arms. The closeness, nurturing despite their shared fear, felt like a fragile shield against the dark forces gathering beyond their walls. "It's okay, baby. I'm here," she whispered, though her voice trembled like the branch of a tree in the storm, yet, that calm was merely an illusion. As the rain lashed harder, tapping out frenzied rhythms over the roof, Laura's phone buzzed again, more texts from the unknown number. "You're not safe, it's coming for him, find the others." Who were the others? The message was a thread pulling her deeper into the web of terror wrapping around their lives. She dropped the phone onto the kitchen table, unable to look at it anymore. Each received message twisted her heart and mingled with her unease about the storm outside. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Danny's voice was small, breaking through her thoughts. She brushed a hand over his damp hair, trying to push her own fears aside. "Just some weird text, nothing to worry about, honey. Let us read a story instead, okay?" But as she bent down to grab a book, she couldn't shake the sensation of something lurking just outside, watching through the splattered rain. Suddenly, there was a rush of wind, a fierce howl that sent a chill down her spine, and the lights flickered dangerously overhead. Your greatest fears don't hide, they come crashing in. They collide, mix with the real. There was another knock, louder this time, pushing her instinct to run. "Stay here," she urged Danny, bolting towards the door yet again, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but this time, she felt at the heaviness of the air and the presences whispering just outside. She froze, a shiver rolling down her spine. What if it wasn't just the rain that kept knocking? As she hesitated, she heard whispers. Faint, desperate gasps urging her to open the door. Her heart raced, pounding violently in her chest. With shaky hands, she grasped the doorknob, bracing herself against it like a dam against the flood. She could sense the pulsating energy, the weight of their silence. What if she unleashed something worse? The storm crashed around her, beckoning her to give in, to let the storm inside. Danny's whimper broke through her stormy thoughts. Protecting him was her only priority, even if it meant facing the unknown. Summoning every ounce of courage, she gripped the door and pulled it open just a crack, the downpour splashing into the entryway, blurring her vision. "Who's there?" she demanded, steel in her voice but ice in her veins. The answer echoed back, blending with the rain. "You have to listen, the shadows, they're not just shadows." That was when it hit her, a terrible realization that twisted the air between them. What could those shadows want from her son? And why did this feel like the storm inside her head finally matched the chaos outside? But she had opened it now. Would she dare to step into the swirling darkness? As the rain hissed and the wind shrieked, Laura stood on a precipice, a moment from which there might be no return. And as thunder cracked like a whip overhead, she took a breath, ready to demand the truth. What awaited her was the answer to the real horror of Willow Creek, and she had to know. The crack in the doorway grew wider, revealing a sliver of shadowed figure standing just beyond the veil of rain. Laura squinted against the swirling darkness. "Who are you?" she yelled, her voice swallowed by the storm. "You don't understand," the voice carried through the torrent, cold and unyielding. "We are the whispers in the night. You must find the others, before it's too late." As the rain pummeled down, the figures shifted, their outlines flickering like fireflies. Danny pulled at her sleeve, eyes wide and wet with fear. "Mommy." She pushed the door wide, letting the rain soak her clothes, her heart a war drum in her chest. "What do you mean before it's too late?" The figures stepped forward, shadows stretching and reaching, as if drawn in by a gravity all their own. One figure, a woman with hollow eyes, leaned closer. "Your son," she breathed, her breath icy. "It feeds on fear, and he's the next feast." Laura's heart stopped. A chill swept through her, deeper than the cold rain, gripping her tightly like a vice. "No. You stay away from him." Suddenly, the figures retreated, halting just out of reach. "You must find the others," the woman's voice echoed, fading into the howl of the storm. "Ask them about the shadows. They can help." Daniel clung to her, trembling. Every instinct screamed to slam the door shut, to protect him, but an unsettling curiosity wrapped around Laura, growing tighter. "What shadows? Who are they?" But the figures just stared, silent and watchful, a curtain of mystery hanging between them. With a sharp intake of breath, she pulled Danny closer. They had to find answers. "Let us go," she whispered to her son, turning away from the door as it thudded shut, a loud clap mixing with the rolling thunder. The walls seemed to close in as they moved to the living room, the glow from the lamp dim and static. Shadows darted in the corners of her vision, a flicker of movement that sent icy fingers crawling across her spine. A noise shattered the stillness. A loud crash from outside. Laura exchanged a frantic look with Danny, who bit his lip, eyes wide with terror. "Mommy, what was that?" "I don't know, sweetheart." A lump formed in her throat as she moved to the window, the rain lashing against the glass. The outside world was a blurred void of merciless chaos. Cautiously, she peered out, breath hitching as a figure appeared, soaked and shivering on the road, the last remnants of daylight revealing a familiar face. It was Alice, a neighbor who had often joined them for coffee, now seemingly lost and haunted. "Help me! They're coming!" Alice cried, flailing her arms, drenched in terror. Panic surged as Laura took a step back. "What is happening?" "It's all true. The shadows, they're real." The storm raged louder, erasing any comfort in the known world. Laura tasted fear on her tongue, thick and bitter. Danny grasped her hand, pressing his cheek against her arm. The enormity of what lay beyond choked her heart. "Mommy," Danny whimpered. "I'm scared." She knelt in front of him, forcing strength into her voice. "I know, baby. But we have to be brave. We will figure this out." But a deeper pit of dread clawed at her insides. How could they figure it out if the answers were beyond their grasp, hidden in the swirling shadows of madness that engulfed their town? There was another crash, this time from behind them. The back door swung wide, pulled by an unseen force, rain spilling inside. Laura's grip tightened on Danny. "Get away from the door," she shouted, heart racing, ready to face whatever came through, but the shadows outside seemed to loom larger, filling the air with malice. Then, she caught a glimpse of red glint behind the darkness. Something was attempting to break through, something hungry and seeking. As the entity surged forward, she instinctively wrapped her arms around Danny, ready to fight or flee. Could they stand against this horror? But the question lingered in the air like an echo in a vast canyon. Who are the others and what do they want? As the storm roared, Laura realized they had stepped into a deeper nightmare than she had ever imagined. And the clock was ticking. What price would she have to pay to keep Danny safe? The shadows twisted unnaturally, their forms shifting like liquid darkness on a stormy river. As the back door swung wider, Laura felt an icy breath brush against her neck. She turned slowly, her heart pounding, preparing for the unknown entity to tear through the threshold. The wind howled, a frenzied companion to her terror. "Danny!" she whispered fiercely, pulling him behind her, shielding him like a fragile treasure. The red glimmer grew brighter, edging closer with an insatiable hunger. "Mommy, I don't want to be here." Danny's voice trembled. His small hands gripped her tightly, grounding her in reality, even as the world around them spiraled out of control. She could almost see the shadows pulsing with life, a dark symphony beckoning them into the abyss. "Stay close," she hissed, her every instinct screaming to flee. But the panic clawing at her throat kept her rooted, paralyzed by uncertainty. What if her flight only led them deeper into the shadows? Alice staggered into the living room, water dripping from her battered frame, her eyes wide and wild. "They know," she gasped, her breath visible in the frigid air. "They know you can see them." "What?" Laura's heart sank. What do you mean? They feed on doubt, on fear. The others, they're hiding in the old church down the block. You have to find them before. Alice's voice faded into a shuddering gasp as her gaze locked onto the doorway. Laura's blood ran cold, something had breached the threshold. The shadows slithered into the room, their presence a chill that wrapped around her throat. Get back! She shouted, stepping forward as the darkness lunged closer. But just as she prepared to lunge at it with every ounce of maternal strength, the shadows halted. A low hiss echoed through the air, curious and malicious. Not yet, the voice sounded layered, as though multiple whispers coiled around one another, weaving a web of dread. Alice screamed, panic breaking the stillness. They want him. She pointed a shaking finger toward Danny. They want his fear. Laura pushed Danny behind a couch, her heart racing faster than ever. No. She knew instinctively that whatever was coming was beyond reason. She had to protect her son at any cost. But a sudden silence fell, sharp and heavy. The shadows danced, teasing her with flashes of movement. Shapes flickered, only to vanish back into the gloom. Time stretched out like a shadowy maw, and Laura felt the walls of her sanity inch closer. Mommy, Danny whimpered, tears streaming silently down his cheeks, his tiny body trembling. He looked up at her, the trust in his eyes gnawing at her heart. Hold on to me, she instructed fiercely, but deep down she feared there might be no escape. Suddenly, the red glint split through the thickening shadows, revealing a monstrous figure hunched low. It had no distinct shape, only a myriad of eyes reflecting the dim lamplight, glowing with an unsettling hunger. Laura's breath caught in her throat. But Alice had already retreated, arms wrapped protectively around herself, the spark in her eyes dimming. You have to go. Don't let him see you, he feeds on it. The creature shifted, a primal growl erupting from its depths. Laura's instincts took over, and she pulled Danny behind her, her legs trembling. Now! Alice screamed, and before Laura could react, Alice lunged for the door, a sacrifice in the storm. Mommy! Danny cried out, horror washing over him as the shadows enveloped Alice, swallowing her in a heartbeat. Laura's heart raced as fear coursed through her veins. She had to act. With no time to think, she donned her most resolute face. We're leaving. The dark figure turned, its focus now on them, an insatiable force determined to claim what it sought. They could still escape, but in the depth of her heart, a new thought ignited. Was there truly a way out? Or was this their final hour? With dread layering itself deeper than the shadows, Laura took Danny's hand. They were about to step into another storm, not just outside, but within. Hold on tight, she whispered, pushing open the side door. Whatever was waiting outside could not be worse than the fangs of the darkness behind them. As they stepped out into the fury of the storm, the real question lingered: what price would they pay to unlock the truth of the shadows? They plunged ahead, determination mingled with fear, moving toward the foreboding silhouette of the church, where the others hid, and maybe a glimmer of hope. But would hope flourish, or would it too fall victim to the consuming shadows? The rain lashed against them like 1,000 stinging blades, droplets spilling from the sky in relentless sheets. Laura tightened her grip on Danny's hand, dragging him toward the church, its silhouette looming like a grim sentinel against the stormy night. Each step felt weighted, as if the very ground beneath them conspired to pull them back into the darkness they were fleeing. Mommy, I'm scared. Danny whispered, his voice cracking under the strain. I know, sweetheart. Just keep moving, she urged, fighting against the terror pooling in her belly. As they approached the church, the old wooden door creaked open just a fraction, a gaping maw eager to consume them. A flickering light danced within, impossibly bright beneath the oppressive clouds. It felt like a beacon, calling to them, but beneath that allure lurked the uncertainty of the shadows. Is anyone in there? Laura called, her voice echoing off the wet stone. The storm's answer was an uncanny silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic drumming of rain. Let us go. She pressed, urging Danny forward. The moment they crossed the threshold, a wave of warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the icy grasp of fear that had chased them. Inside, flickering candles illuminated huddled figures, faces drawn tight with fear, eyes wide and searching. It was a refuge, but it felt fragile, like a soap bubble in a storm. Laura. A familiar voice shoved its way through the haze of her panic. It was Mark, a neighbor she hadn't seen since the chaos began. You made it. Barely, she gasped, looking around. What is happening here? Are you all okay? We are hiding, he said, glancing nervously toward the door. But they know we're here. They always know. What about the others? Laura pressed, pulse racing. Alice said they can't escape, Mark interrupted, fear washing over his features. Most of them have given in, they're no longer themselves. It's like they're lost to the shadows. Danny's grip tightened on her as he trembled. Mommy, I don't want to be lost. Not like them. Laura knelt, forcing herself to meet his eyes. You won TB. I promise. We won to let them take you. The flickering light in the church flickered ominously, and whispers crawled through the air, clawing at her resolve. The shadows outside pressed against the walls, hungry, waiting for them to step back into the storm. What do we do? Laura asked, desperation clawing at her throat. Mark frowned, casting a look deeper into the church. I don't know, but we can't stay here. We have to find a way to fight back. Before she could respond, a sharp banging reverberated through the church door, drawing their attention. It sounded like the world was being conjured from chaos, a torrent of rage enticed by their arrival. What if it's them? Danny whispered, eyes wide, tears glistening. The door shook violently, and a voice boomed through, a chilling blend of terror and authority. Let us in. We can save you. Laura's heart thundered in her chest. Should they trust this voice? Or was it another deception? How do we know it's safe? She asked, stepping back, instinct urging caution. I have to go see, Mark declared, driven by fear and hope. Before she could halt him, he strode to the door, hands raised. Wait. We're here. Mark, no. Laura screamed, but it was too late. The door burst open, and in rushed a flood of shadows, tendrils reaching for Mark, pulling him into the choking darkness. Mommy! Danny screamed, and the panic spilled over, blending into the chaos. Laura grabbed Danny and raced deeper into the church, but that boiling dread surged again. Mark's face was already twisted in despair, swallowed whole. The air crackled with malicious intent. How far would the shadows go to feed on their fear? It was becoming rapidly clear that escape was an illusion. Follow me. She yelled, turning down a narrow corridor. The walls felt alive. Each step resonated with the whispers swelling around them, urging them to give in to despair. As they bolted toward the unknown, Laura's thoughts raced. Was there truly safety in the church? Or had they stumbled straight into a trap set by the shadows? They found a door at the end of the corridor, ominous and thick, like the whispers that surrounded them. Its surface was cold, and it felt wrong to touch it. But nothing could be worse than what waited behind them. With a deep breath, Laura turned the handle, and as it creaked open, darkness poured into the space around them. The shadows snaked closer, and questions hung, thick as fog. What lay on the other side? Could they find a way to fight back? The church trembled under the weight of its secrets, swallowing their hopes as they stepped into the dark. The darkness enveloped them like a shroud, as thick as the storm outside. Laura reached out blindly, her heart thumping violently against her ribcage. Danny clutched her side, his tiny body trembling against her. Can you see anything? He whispered, voice barely audible over the pounding of the rain. No, she replied, trying to keep her own fear in check. Just hold on to me. Cautiously, they stepped forward, the floor creaking as if protesting their presence. The air grew colder, heavy with an unshakable dread. She could feel the shadows pulsating, a living entity hungry for despair. Mommy, Danny's voice wavered. It feels wrong. I don't want to be here. I know, honey, but we need to keep moving. We need to find a way out. Laura's footsteps echoed in the stillness, the sound hollow and disconcerting. Every creak, every flutter of fabric sent jolts of fear through her. Just when she thought the darkness would swallow them whole, a flicker of light appeared ahead. It just barely cut through the blackness, like a distant memory of warmth. Over there. She urged, pointing. As they hurried toward it, the shadows seemed to thicken, curling around her legs like vipers. Panic gripped her heart, but she pressed forward. With each step, wisps of shadow snaked closer, whispering secrets that clawed at her mind. What if they didn't make it? What if the darkness consumed them too? As they reached the flickering light, Laura discovered a small window opaque with grime but barely allowing a faint beam to penetrate. Mommy, can we get out? Danny's voice rose with hope. No, we can't. It's too high. She put a hand on the window frame, feeling the chill radiate from it. It felt wrong, as if every object in the room was a watchful eye. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, coalescing in an unsettling swirl behind them, growing in size and intensity. A low growl emanated from the depths, rumbling and echoing, as if the darkness itself were angry at their intrusion. Run! Laura shouted, and they darted back into the corridor, but the shadows surged forward, cutting off their escape. The flickering light from the window was swallowed up, and despair washed over them. Laura felt Danny's grip slacken as he was pulled back, the shadows clawing, trying to take him. Mommy! He cried, terror-filled eyes wide, a scream trapped in his throat. Danny! No! She lunged, snatching him just in time, the tension ripping through her muscles. Barely breathing, they stumbled back, hearts racing. This way! She urged, spotting a dim outline further down the corridor. It looked like a door, just beyond the reach of the shadows. The shadows hissed, their forms twisting with an unnatural sentience, like a swarm of angry bees. They're coming! She gasped and started to pull Danny along with what strength she had left. As they rushed toward the door, she pulled the handle. It was locked. Open! She screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. The shadows drew nearer, every sinister whisper wrapping around her like tendrils. Pleased with one last effort, she slammed her shoulder against the door, and with a resounding crack, it burst open. They stumbled forward into a dimly lit room filled with crumbling pews, twisted church relics laid to waste, but no escape yet in sight. The air was thick with an earthy smell, a mix of rot and something darker. She could hear chanting, a guttural sound reverberating through the walls. Mommy, what is that? Danny whimpered, his innocence stark in contrast to the horror enveloping them. I don't know. The shadows hung back, momentarily retreating, as if wary of some unknown force within. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the darkness at the far end of the room, cloaked in deep shadows, a silhouette with features obscured. The chanting intensified, wrapping around them, compelling and terrifying. Instinct gripped Laura's heart, her skin prickling in fear. Who are you? She demanded, her voice shaking but defiant. The figure tilted its head, piercing eyes glimmering like obsidian. The lost do not always find their way home. With a chilling smile, it raised an arm, beckoning them forward as the shadows writhed behind it, eager to consume. Danny. Laura breathed, fear pooling in her gut. We need to go. But the door slammed shut behind them, sealing their fate. What was this figure that held the dark at bay? What secrets lay in the shadows waiting for them? The whispers grew louder, hungry once more. Could they really uncover the truth in this forsaken place? Or would they become the next offerings to darkness? The light in the room flickered unsettlingly, casting elongated shadows over the dilapidated pews, creating a macabre dance of darkness and retreating hopes. Laura found herself paralyzed as the figure's glimmering eyes locked onto hers, an ancient knowledge swirling within their depths. Mommy, I don't like this. Danny's voice trembled, the innocence of childhood fracturing in the weight of the horror surrounding them. "Stay close," she whispered fiercely, clutching his hand tighter. The spectre seemed to smile wider, an expression full of menace, making Laura's stomach churn with anxiety. "Why do you resist?" The figure's voice rolled over them, low and dark, as if the very walls echoed it. "You are drawn here for a purpose, as are we all." Laura felt a shudder crawl up her spine. "What do you want?" Her voice cracked, each word heavy with the impending dread. "Everything comes at a cost." The figure gestured toward the shadows that swirled like smoke behind it. Their form rippled, more alive than before, hungry whispers pressing against her ears, taunting her resolve. "What cost?" Laura couldn't help but ask through gritted teeth, trying to mask her mounting fear, trying to gain control. "Sacrifice is the key." Its smile dropped slightly, replaced by an unsettling seriousness. "One must be willing to give something to gain the truth." Danny whimpered, sensing the terror mounting. Laura's heart pounded like a war drum, resonating with despair. "We have nothing to give you. Just let us go." The shadows surged forward, hungry for their light, and with that, the figure raised an arm, its voice rising in a chant that twisted through the air. The deep, echoing sound wrapped around them like a cold embrace. Mother and child, tethered by fear, pay the price or disappear. A sudden wind howled through the room, rattling the crumbling walls, leaving Laura gasping. The pews creaked ominously, as if the very structure of the place was alive with anticipation. In that moment, Laura felt an overwhelming weight on her chest. It was as if the room itself was a living entity, breathing and watching. The shadows pressed closer, eager to claim their next meal. She could almost feel the darkness clinging to her skin, drawing energy from her very soul. "Mommy, please." Danny's small voice pierced her thoughts, and in that cry, she found a flicker of clarity. "Stay behind me," she yelled. With a surge of instinct, she pushed forward, ignoring the ominous figure, trying to reach for the darkness beyond. The thrumming voices backed off slightly, bewildered by her defiance. And then, in the corner of her eye, she noticed what appeared to be a cryptic symbol carved into the wall. Its edges glowed faintly, pulsating in sync with her heartbeat, the only trace of hope in this nightmare. "Danny! Look!" she cried, pointing to it. "What is that?" He replied, his curiosity battling his fear. "I don't know, but we have to find out." She turned back toward the figure. "What is this symbol?" The figure's expression darkened, eyes narrowing with fury. "Do not heed its call. It offers only false salvation." But Laura felt drawn to it, as if it pulled her closer with each shuddering breath. The chanting surged louder, a cacophony of dark promises and deathly echoes. She pressed on, heart racing, every fiber of her being screaming for them to leave, but a part of her thirsted for the truth. At that moment, the shadows lunged, and she barely ducked just in time, grabbing Danny tightly. The figure turned its gaze back to the shadows, and the room erupted into chaos, the air filled with screeches and growls as light danced frantically around them. "Mommy!" Danny cried, clinging to her as they darted toward the glowing symbol, a heartbeat away from being consumed. With a final push, she grasped the symbol, hoping against hope that it would anchor them to the fate she sought, the mystery promised. As she touched it, a blinding light erupted, momentarily pushing back the darkness. But in that fleeting brilliance, she glimpsed the countless faces of those who had come before them, twisted in sorrow. Suspended in time, and then, just as suddenly, the light vanished, leaving them in deeper shadows than before. "Where are we?" Danny whimpered, his voice echoing through the void. "Back to the start. I fear what path lay ahead in the shadowy abyss. What horrors awaited them as they escaped one darkness only to be thrust into another." The figure re-emerged from the dark, its smile returning, more wicked than before. The chanting began anew, louder, frantic, as if preparing for an unspeakable event. "Come forth. The sacrifice approaches." What sacrifice? And how far would they have to go to learn the truth? The shadows whispered with manic energy, swirling around Laura and Danny like a relentless storm. The air thickened, heavy with the weight of dread that seemed to seep into their bones. As the figure loomed closer, Laura's instincts screamed at her to run, but the symbol pulsed behind her eyelids, a beacon of desperate hope and lurking terror. "Mommy, I'm scared." Danny's voice cracked, quaking in the thick air. She could feel his small fingers tremble in her grip, and her heart twisted painfully at the fear emanating from him. "Just hold on to me," she urged, mustering whatever courage remained. The figure, now swathed in a maddening darkness, stepped forward, hands outstretched like the claws of a beast ready to devour its prey. "Long have I waited for your arrival," it hissed, voice dripping with insidious glee. "The sacrifice is not merely a shedding of blood, it requires that which you cherish most." Laura felt her pulse quicken. What could she possibly lose more than Danny? The thought unsettled her, each moment slicing through her resolve. "Leave us alone," she shouted defiantly, yet even she could hear the tremor lacing her voice. The figure only laughed, a deep belly laugh that echoed like thunder in the dim chamber. "Defiance is sweet, yet futile," it replied. "You must decide, who will you trade for salvation?" Laura's blood ran cold. The shadows coiled tighter around them, their whispers now a cacophony, an unbearable din pounding against her eardrums. She could sense Danny's fear rising like a tide, threatening to drown them both. "Mommy, don't let it take me," he sobbed, his eyes wide with terror. With every word, every cry, the walls trembled and shifted, as if the very sanctuary they stood in were a living thing, restless and hungry. The cryptic symbol behind them flickered faintly, illuminating the room with its ghostly glow, and with it, a flicker of an idea sparked in Laura's mind. Maybe it's time to fight back, she thought, determination swelling inside her. She bent lower, shielding Danny with her body. "I want to let you have him," she screamed, heart racing as the shadows writhed, pulsing with a life of their own. "You can't take him. I refuse to sacrifice him." The figure's laugh ceased abruptly, and an unsettling calm swept over the chamber. "But sacrifice is inevitable. You cannot escape what the darkness demands." Then, as if in response to her declaration, the faint glow of the symbol surged brightly, enveloping them in a protective cocoon. The shadows shrieked, recoiling like burnt insects. Just then, the air shifted. An ominous rumble echoed through the ancient building, and the walls began to crack, fissures spidering in all directions. The feeling of being swallowed whole returned, the sensation of an unseen force pushing them deeper into despair. "Mommy!" Danny screamed again, but the sound broke off as the floor began to tremble violently. Laura quickly scanned the chamber, eyes darting to every shadowy corner, searching for a way out. But there was only darkness creeping closer, ready to consume them. "Through the symbol!" she shouted suddenly. "Danny, we have to get to it. It's our only chance." As they moved, the room twisted and turned, making their path feel endless and labyrinthine. The whispers shifted to a mournful wailing, now clawing at Laura's sanity with chilling clarity. Save us, she dug deep within herself, finding that flicker of defiance again. "You want to have him. I'll take my chances," she cried, pushing through the encroaching shadows. The symbol pulsed brighter, and Danny's hand felt icy in hers. When finally they arrived at the glowing emblem, she swung Danny behind her, whispering hurriedly, "On the count of 3, we touch it together." "Okay, Mommy," he whispered, fear mingling with trust. 1. 2. She took a deep breath, feeling the chill of shadows brushing against her cheek as they closed in, thirsting for the last shred of hope. As darkness loomed, she gasped, 3. They reached for the symbol together, but the air thickened, twisting into a force that threatened to tear them apart. What would happen if they succeeded? Or if they failed? Would the darkness let them go? Or would they join the lamenting souls trapped within its grasp forever? The moment their hands connected with the glowing symbol, a blinding light exploded around them, forcing Laura to shield her eyes. She felt a rush, an overwhelming sensation of being pulled. The shadows clawed at her, angry and desperate, trying to drag her back, but the light was relentless. "Hold on tight!" she screamed, voice rough with terror. It was a command, but it was also a plea. She could feel Danny's grip tighten, his small fingers clasped around hers with a strength that belied his size, time stretched and twisted, bending in ways that made her stomach churn. The darkness writhed, now distant, a mere shadow behind a veil of brilliance. Yet the echoes of fear remained whispers and shrieks that burrowed deep into her mind. They were not free. Not yet as the glow started to recede, Laura looked down at Danny, whose face was a mask of confusion and fear. But something shifted, a subtle change in the air. The symbol pulsed, now casting both light and shadow, revealing twisted reflections of the room beyond. "Mommy, where are we?" Danny's voice trembled, and the nick of uncertainty struck a chord of panic in Laura's chest. The surroundings began to form a room, yes, but not the one they had just escaped. Walls seemed to hum ominously while the air throbbed with a pulse. The shadows extended, curling like smoke along the floor, creating dark shapes that danced and shifted. A flicker of hope ignited deep within Laura. "We're safe, Danny. We made it." But her enthusiasm faltered when she realized they were not alone. Shapes emerged from the corners, faces twisted in despair. Eyes wide and unblinking, mouths moving silently as if caught in an eternal scream. A whirlwind of lost souls surrounded them, and that was when she understood the symbol had not saved them, it had transported them to another realm. "Help us!" a voice cried, the sound hollow, reverberating through her bones. Laura's heart raced, and she turned to Danny, whose face was pale and stricken. "No, no, we can't stay here," she gasped, pulling him closer. But tethered to the symbol, the way back seemed nebulous, the boundaries of safety blurred. "What do we do?" Danny asked, his eyes shimmering with tears as he clung tighter to her leg. "I don't know, we have to find a way out or something to protect us." A chill crept over her. The shadows, no longer retreating, began to reform into familiar shapes, figures she recognized from her nightmares, lost souls begging for release but trapped in a cycle of terror. "Remember the whispers?" Danny stammered. They asked to be saved." Laura felt the weight of his words settle upon her, a dilemma she hadn't anticipated. Sacrifice again? Was this darkness asking her to part with something again, to find an answer within this haunted enclave? "No," she declared defiantly, her innards twisting. "I won't trade you for anything, not ever. We'll find another way." But the shadows pressed closer, their grip tightening, urging her to reconsider, whispering promises of escape in exchange for her feverish loyalty. "Let us go," Laura shouted, feeling the desperation building in her chest. "Let us return." And yet, amid the throbbing darkness, a flicker of resolve sparked. The symbol glimmered faintly, almost in response, as if it sensed her refusal to yield. Would voice alone grant them passage back? Would fighting against the darkness bring them salvation? Then, amidst that desperate wreckage of wandering souls, a face emerged within the shadows. A figure, once familiar, now grotesque, a reflection of herself twisted by anguish. It smiled with all the malevolence of the darkness gathered, and whispered, "What will you sacrifice?" Laura's breath caught. The stakes had risen higher, everything hung in the balance. What was she willing to give up to escape this nightmare? The shadows surged forward, and she realized the truth, the answer might lie deeper in the darkness than she had ever feared. What would she discover about herself before it consumed them both? The oppressive darkness weighed heavily, filled with the echoes of unheard cries and twisted faces. Laura held Danny tightly, feeling his fear seep into her bones, yet she was determined. They had to find a way out together. "Listen to me, sweetheart," she whispered, kneeling to meet his wide, frightened eyes. "We are stronger than this. We can't let it win. We have to find the light within us, regardless of the darkness surrounding." With each moment that passed, the shadows thickened, swirling hypnotically, urging her to surrender, to find solace in despair. But she would not yield. "Mommy, I don't like this place. I want to go home." Danny's voice trembled, but deep down, Laura sensed a flicker of brave resolve emanating from him, just as she hoped for herself. She realized then that he needed to see her courage needed to believe in their possibility of escape. "Then we will. But we have to confront it. This darkness wants to keep us trapped in fear, but I won't let it." Gritting her teeth, Laura steeled herself, drawing strength from the glowing symbol behind them. Its light pulsed with potential, hoping to guide them back. Suddenly, the shadows edged closer, whispering maddeningly of despair and helplessness. "Let us save you," they hissed in a discordant chorus. "A simple exchange, no." Laura shouted defiantly. "You have no power over us." The figure of her distorted self hovered before her, mimicking her movements with sinister precision. Its voice dripped with mockery. "What will you sacrifice? There is always a price." The faces behind stretched and distorted in silent screams, drawing nearer, suffocating any remnants of hope. "I won't sacrifice my son," she cried out, clutching Danny tighter. "You cannot have him." Each word echoed out, fiercely cutting through the swirling darkness. "I'll find a way for you, Danny. I promise." The glow of the symbol surged brighter, lighting up the area like a beacon against the depths of despair. "Find the others," the shadows taunted. "The others who once surrendered. All the lost souls ready to exchange their existence." The whispers churned, threatening to tear her resolve apart. "Then let them hear me," Laura said, raising her voice to a fever pitch. "I will fight back. I will not be another lost soul. I refuse to let fear win." With a deep breath, she turned her focus within, connecting with her deepest fears and hopes. "Danny," she urged, "close your eyes and listen. Remember all the moments we cherished, the laughter, the love, the dreams. Hold those close. We are more than just fear." Danny squeezed his eyes shut, his small face scrunching up in concentration, and suddenly, warmth flared within them. The symbol glimmered in resonance with their spirits and an echoing hum wrapped around them both. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in frustration. "Mommy!" Danny whispered in awe, and Laura opened her eyes to find their surroundings shifting again, the dark malice replaced by warmth spreading like sunlight breaking through the clouds. "We are stronger together," she encouraged as they stepped forward, hand in hand. The dim room flickered, and with every step toward the glowing sigil, the darkness whispered in panic. It could sense its hold weakling. "You will regret this. There is no escape." But their connection surged, the light of their courage illuminating every corner of despair around them, pushing the shadows back further. "Dan, this is our moment. On 3, we leap. We reclaim our life." "Okay," Danny said, his voice now firm. 1, 2, 3. Together, they dove toward the glowing symbol, and at that instant, a blaring light filled the chamber, exploding outward, washing away the shadows that slithered away like smoke. With an overwhelming rush, they were propelled through a wall of blinding brilliance, the echoes of desolation screeching behind them, fading as the light enveloped them completely. When the light finally receded, they stumbled onto the hard, wet asphalt outside the church, the storm still raging but feeling somehow distant now. The air had shifted, alive with new possibilities. "Did we make it?" Danny looked up, hope glimmering in his wide eyes. "Yeah," Laura breathed out, relief flooding through her. Tears pricked at her eyes as she pulled him into a tight hug. "We're home, Danny. We're finally free." As they stood together, embracing the chaos around them, she felt a sense of peace unravel the darkness that once threatened to consume them. Willow Creek was still the same old town, but they would face it together, leaving the shadows behind, and somehow, within the heart of that torrential storm, they discovered resilience, a bond stronger than fear. Don't miss this incredible journey. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support our growing community. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how it all ended. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling conclusion. Your support means the world.